Hey guys, welcome back. Thanks for joining me today. And again, happy holidays. I filmed this on the same day that I did the ground portion, but today we're talking about the flight portion of my instrument Checkride. I passed it just a little over a week ago. I am thrilled. It was almost a whole month between when I did the oral portion and the flight portion. And that was tough. One, because I just wanted to get it done and over with, but also because the weather didn't cooperate throughout the whole time. I wasn't able to get much flying in. I almost didn't fly for the whole month of November. Between the last time I flew was Halloween, and my check ride was scheduled on November 9th, and I was fine. It was a little more than a week, but that was my plan, was to fly Halloween and then be ready for my check ride on the 9th. That didn't happen because of weather. So the next time I flew was November 30th or 29th, like barely at the very end. And then I finally was able to finish my check ride on December 4th. So I was just trying to stay current and proficient on the simulator throughout the time that I couldn't fly. But we got it done. I can't tell you guys, I was so fortunate. The day on December 4th, it could not have been the more perfect day. It was perfectly clear, no fog, not a cloud in the sky, perfectly calm, no wind, no turbulence. I mean, talk about ideal conditions for a check ride, let alone an instrument check ride. It doesn't get any better than that. I was so lucky, and as a result, this check ride was so easy and effortless. I mean, so I hate to say that it was easy. It certainly was demanding, but I was lucky that the conditions made it so that there was no point throughout the check ride that I was really nervous or felt, that I did something really wrong, that I was gonna fail. Unlike my private pilot check ride where I was just a wreck, my private pilot, again, if you haven't seen those videos, the link's here in the corner, check those out. But I was very nervous going to my private pilot check ride, not knowing what to expect, not knowing, how forgiving he would be of my mistakes, and I certainly did make some mistakes. So comparing my two check rides so far, my private to my instrument was so much easier, and I know part of that was because of the weather. It was ideal. Maybe I was more prepared. I don't know. Maybe I was more confident because I knew what to expect a little bit more from the check ride process. But anyway, we're gonna go through what we did, and hopefully it helps you as you're preparing for your check ride. So we left Twin Oaks, 7S3. We departed. We made a plan we were just gonna go to Mcminnville to do all these approaches. And we made a plan to do the Vor Approach first. So we departed from Twin Oaks here and flew to the southwest. He gave me vectors, so we decided, or he told me ahead of time that he was going to be the one, he was going to be my controller. And so anytime that I was talking to approach control, I was going to be talking to him. And then he would actually be talking to approach control. So I handled all the radios, of course, on departure and climb out. As soon as I switch over to approach, I tell him what I would say, and then he takes care of it because he needed to make sure that they knew what we needed to do. So he was coordinating everything with approach on the radio, but he was my approach controller. So when approach came back and told us to do something, he would then relay it to me, and I would just respond. But of course, without actually transmitting over the radio, I would respond to him as if I was responding to the approach control. So he gave me vectors, and we started out, we didn't go directly to the VOR approach. He gave me vectors, and I followed those vectors, which ultimately were kind of bringing me out on another radial. So the VOR approach usually goes out on like the 204 radial from the Newberg VOR, but we were more out on the 224, 225 radial or heading. So we did that. I thought maybe he was going to he was bringing me out that way to extend the DME arc that we had to do, because it's a very short DME arc for this particular approach. So I thought maybe he was having me go out further just so we would have more time in the DME arc, and that's fine. I mentioned that to him as I was briefing the plate. I just looked and I said, well, we're going out this way, so I'm gonna assume that once we get to 23 DME, we'll turn in. And as soon as I said that, maybe because I acknowledged what we were doing and I was planning, he told me to turn to a heading of 180 and go direct to Kogok when able. So maybe I saved myself from having to do a longer DME arc, I don't know. But so that's where you see that we turned to the south and went direct to Kogok. And then the DME arc happened as normal for that short little period there. We intercepted the inbound course. My track log here, I lost reception with my ADSB receiver right during this part. So where you see it go off to the left, I didn't actually do that. But the ADSB receiver had to kind of guess and check because I lost it at this point right here. And then I did not turn it back on until I was on the ground at Mcminnville. So we go down, we do the step downs for the Vor approach. Everything's great. I handle the radios once I switch from approach to Mcminnville. I handle the radios for the local traffic, but he also jumped in and helped me with local traffic calls as well, because obviously he can see and I can't. We got in there fairly effortlessly, given the amount of traffic that was actually going on at the airport. It was quite busy, but we were able to slip right in there. Made for a left downwind entry for runway 22. Made sure I never went below my MDAs. Gave myself a 50-foot cushion. You never want to go below those MDA numbers, so 50-foot cushion, kept it right there. Once I was at our minimums, he said, you're right at the cloud base here, and I'm like, okay, well, we can go down just another 50 feet, and I just made sure not to go down below that MDA. And then as soon as I was ready to turn base and make that normal descent to landing, I announced going below MDA, making my descent to landing. Turned in, landed, it was great. I mean, it couldn't have gone any better. So I was really pleased with that. We made a full stop at Mcminnville there, got my ADSB back on, and then we needed to make a departure from Mcminnville. Now, Mcminnville doesn't have any SIDS, doesn't have any standard instrument departures, so we had just used the obstacle departure procedure, and he asked me to brief that and fly it. So I looked it up. Basically, with the Mcminnville departure procedure, you make a left turnout and you intercept the 183 radial from Newburgh and fly that inbound to hold over Newburgh and climb in the hold up to your cruising altitude. Now, the thing he was looking for in this case is that I was making the left turn, because the natural direction you would want to turn for to go to Newburgh is to the right. And I guess evidently sometimes people do that and that would fail. You would fail. So left turnout from Mcminnville to intercept the 183 radial inbound to Newburgh VOR. I did that. I put it into, we were very fortunate in my plane to have the 2 G5s and the GTN 650. With the 650, we can put in direct to Newburgh VOR. I can put in the course that I want to take to it, so it makes it very easy. I just told it that I wanted to take the 003 course to the VOR, sets it up in the GPS, so I just have to fly it from there. Went off without a hitch, no problem. And as soon as he saw that I made all the correct decisions, he said, okay, great, you did that all perfect, let's keep going. And from there, he gave me vectors for the ILS approach. So from there, we did our vectors to the ILS. We were going to, originally we were going to do the published hold for the ILS approach on the mist, because we have to do one hold for the Checkride. But due to other traffic in the area, he decided to take me out and just do the hold entry with the procedure turn for the ILS approach. So we went out to the south a little bit, came up and intercepted the course with the procedure turn. Now, this is where I was particularly proud of myself, and I think he was pretty impressed as well. As we were approaching the final approach, or not the final, the initial approach fix, Osier, for the procedure turn, the GPS told me basically what I expected. We were gonna make a teardrop entry, and we were going to turn to a heading of 008 to fly our outbound leg before turning back. However, so it came back, and I think it said, I'm pretty sure it said 007. It said turn to a heading of 007, 1 degree off of 008, that's fine. But then, whether I interpreted it wrong or whether it was doing something weird, I don't know. But basically, I ended up flying a parallel entry and following the GPS outbound on the parallel course. And so then when it told me to make the turn for the procedure turn, it told me to make a right turn, which would have taken me to the unprotected side of the procedure. And I had to figure out why it was doing that. I think initially it was just a misunderstanding on my part, but when we finally got to the point where we were gonna turn, I was like, this is telling me to turn to the right, but I'm not gonna do that because it's gonna be taking me to the wrong side. And so I made the PIC decision, I'm gonna turn to the left. And the most important thing to do is make sure you stay on that protected side of the hold. So I made the turn to the left despite what the GPS was telling me. I vocalized that, I told him exactly what I was doing, why I was doing it. So we ultimately made, or I should say we continued and made the parallel entry and got on course, no problems at all. He brought that up later on in our debrief, and he did say that he was happy to see that. So I was pretty proud of myself for that. You gotta remember, you can't always trust your equipment in that case. You know, it makes mistakes. So you always gotta confirm that the equipment is telling you, you know, especially GPS is telling you what, something that you expect to see, and you know, that you override it if you don't like what it's telling you. So we did that, got on the inbound course, no problems at all, followed the ILS straight in, and I mean, I was really happy with it. No problems at all, just followed it straight down. Missed at the end, made a right turnout. Because of the dynamic with him talking to Approach and me not, it kind of lulled me into this state where I would just forget to change the radios over to Approach. And so sometimes he would say, okay, we're climbing out, is there anything you need to do? I'm like, oh yeah, I gotta change the radio. So I changed the radio, and then again, he calls, I tell him what I want to do, and he then calls Approach for real. We go up and we prepare for the Rnav approach, and we're going to do this Rnav approach with partial panel. So we go back, we get vectored, or he gives me vectors back to the Rnav approach, and as we're coming in, we get back on the final approach fix, or not, or on the final approach course. This was the one time I kind of made a little mistake. I did actually go below my MDA to intercept the final approach fix, or the glide slope, and I got about 100 feet or so low almost, but I caught it and I corrected it immediately. And so, you know, he didn't say anything at the time. Later on in the debrief, he just brought it up and said, you know, this is the one place you kind of got a little off, but you corrected it, and it was good. So that's the most important thing, guys. If you do make those mistakes, correct it immediately, acknowledge it, and usually you're gonna be okay. All right, so we did that. He failed, we have the 2G5s, so he failed my attitude indicator. So I had no attitude indicator. I had to go off of, I had the localizer course for my horizontal or lateral navigation, and I had the glide slope still for vertical, but I didn't have any sense of what orientation my airplane was in, so I had to use my vertical speed, my altimeter, my DG, and my turn coordinator to make sure that I was keeping the proper path and all that. But all in all, that went well. Went in down to minimums again, went miss, and I was happy with that. Last thing we did was go to do our unusual attitudes. He had me climb out to the north. We canceled flight following, or no, we didn't cancel yet. We just asked to do some maneuvers. We did our standard unusual attitudes, and those were all fine. And then from there, the checkride was pretty much over at that point. He said, in case you don't know, you passed. And I'm like, awesome. But he showed me some cool things on the way back, just using trim to your advantage to establish, proper airspeeds and glide slope so that you can fly hands off. And it was very helpful. So those are definitely things I'm going to be practicing, really utilizing trim, not just at the basic level, but really using trim in an advanced way, in the most efficient way, to where you almost have just an autopilot on your hands. You can steer laterally with your rudder to hold a heading, and if trimmed out properly, you can fly at any airspeed, at any rate of descent. So that was very helpful. He showed me kind of how he does that. And that was it, guys. I'm trying to think of other points that happened, but ultimately, know your equipment in the airplane. Know what you have available to you. I had the GTN 650 and the G5s. I was really familiar with their functionality, and I used it to my advantage. So he was happy to see that I kind of knew all the little bells and whistles that were in there, so I could use it as much as possible. And then again, also just don't always put 100% faith into your bells and whistles. So again, I was really proud of myself to make that decision to not follow the GPS. Whether it was an initial error on my part or not, ultimately we got in a situation where if I had just followed what the GPS was telling me to do, I would have ended up on the unprotected side of that hold and possibly failed. So I made that decision to turn left, and so he was happy to see that. That was pretty much it. So I passed, I was so happy to do so, and on to commercial now. So please put any questions you have down in the comments. I'd love to hear from you, how your journey on your instrument rating is going, or how your check ride went. What little things popped up during your check ride that threw you for a loop, or what was your proudest moment during your check ride? Let me know down below, love to hear that. And for now, resume your own navigation, guys. We will see you next time. Thanks for hanging out with me.